This is Avonelle Hawke's Oral History, Part 14. We're leaving Omaha. Dad's been transferred to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. Now, how did that happen? How did he happen to end up back home? Do you remember? Was that an accident, or? I mean, of all the Air Force bases in the world they could have sent him to after Omaha, he gets to go to Tucson.
I'm not sure whether Dad requested it and they gave it to us, or whether they just happened to send us there. The first time we were stationed here in 48 to 54, that was the Air Force. They just did it. It was a period of time in the military where they were trying to station families nearest their home. And I don't know about the second time.
So you sold the house in Bellevue.
Sold it for exactly what we had bought it for. To Tom and Betty Grubb, friends of ours.
Oh, okay. So that was pretty easy.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we're off in summertime, as I recall.
On our wedding anniversary, we packed up and left.
Okay. And how did we go right to Tucson, or what did we do?
We camped on the way back to Tucson. We had a pink station wagon. I started to call it a Suburban. And we still had Susie, our first dog, in Omaha. And so we threw Susie in the station wagon along with the three boys, and off we went.
With our camping equipment?
With our camping equipment, yeah.
Do we have a trailer?
No.
Okay. And so Dad, like most times he transfers, has about a few weeks of
30-day leave.
30-day leave, okay. So where did we go?
Well, I remember we camped in South Dakota, the Mount Rushmore, the Black Hills. It was a beautiful campground, I remember. And we all went up to the monument to Mount Rushmore and oohed and awed over that. It was magnificent. And then we camped next, and we might have camped somewhere in between, but I don't think so. We went to Yellowstone National Park, and that was a beautiful experience. I remember we were at the top of a deep incline on the road into the park, and Dad's brakes didn't give out, but what kind of brakes, what was it on the car that gave out that made it hard to stop? And Dad really had a hard time until we got that fixed. And then we camped there, and Susie kept the black bears away from us. Very definitely. Boy, she was ferocious. We tied her to the car. Joe, we didn't have the trailer then. I was trying to think. But we saw the guys, our Old Faithful, and we toured the whole park.
Now, when you said Susie kept the black bears away, is that because you didn't see any black bears, or because you saw black bears and you saw her?
We saw one. We saw one. And she just didn't want anybody around our campground. So when we had her tied up, she would really just guard everything. But we had a wonderful time in Yellowstone National Park. And then I think we came on down to Tucson.
And where did we stay in Tucson?
At Grandma and Grandpa's house.
And you started looking for a house to buy.
Yeah. And Mildred and George, of course, lived in Indian Ridge, in the home they had built in 1956 here. And we looked all over it. I have allergies, pardon me, folks. And we looked at all different parts of Tucson, mostly on the east side, because that's where the family lived. We looked at some nice places across the street from Indian Ridge in a place of townhouses next to the Tanque Verde Guest Ranch. No, that restaurant.
The tack room?
The tack room.
Oh, okay. Colonia
Verde was up at the corner.
Colinas, something, yeah.
And we looked in Colonia Verde and almost bought a place there. But neither place, Colonia Verde, nor the place right across from Indian Ridge, had an area where we could trust having Susie.
Oh,
and
yard.
we wanted a yard. So we finally found a place in Georgia Mildred's section, neighborhood, Indian Ridge. And it was a lovely place, big family home, 4 bedrooms, 2 great big bathrooms and a big swimming pool, and just a lovely home. And just to tell you how much the economy has changed, it seemed like it was too expensive for us. Dad felt comfortable with it, but I was just kind of coming from a house that cost us $16,000 to build to a house that was 3 years old for $27,500. No, $37,500. $27,500. It was unbelievably cheap compared to today. And it was a nicely built 4-bedroom, lovely home. And so we decided we'd buy that. And it didn't take long to get moved in. And we enjoyed that home for 13 years.
Each of us boys had our own room.
Each of you had your own room. Mike and George had the front bathroom, and you and Dad and I had the back bathroom, and the family room, the living room, and our master bedroom all opened up on a back patio with a big pool.
A nice little side yard.
And we had a huge side yard, a long driveway. It was a lovely home.
And then you went from, in Bellevue, all the boys walking to school, which was a few blocks away, to a new situation. What was that?
Well, unfortunately, Indian Ridge was not close to any schools. And so you had to take, Mike and George had to take a bus to high school, and you had to take the bus to Fort Lowell School.
Yeah, but Mike and George weren't going to the same school when we first got there.
No, George was going to Townsend Junior High. He had to take a bus there.
And
then Mike, was he driving then? Shortly after that, he was driving, so we got a car for him.
And where did he go?
He went to Palo Verde High School on 22nd Street, which was quite a distance away from.
It was.
But it was the closest high school.
And Frank, where was he going?
Frank was going to Fort Lowell School, elementary school.
Right. Taking a bus.
Taking a bus.
Right.
That was a long distance away too.
Yeah. Right. So getting settled in, and so where did you do most of your shopping?
I'm sorry?
Where did you do most of your shopping?
Well, we were close to the base, so I shopped at the commissary. And then there was a shopping center up at the corner of Colonia Verde, and I shopped there.
Was that the one are you referring to the one at Speedway in Wilmot, Monterey Village?
No. There was one at Colonia Verde
I don't
corner.
remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There was a shopping area there.
But the big grocery store was A.J. Bayless, right? A.J. Bayless.
That sounds familiar,
in
yeah.
the Monterey Shopping Center.
That was at That was at Colonia Verde, I
No, that
think.
was Speedway in Wilmot,
Was it?
across from Casa
Monterey
Molina.
Village.
Across from Casa Molina.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So there were shopping areas near me.
right, right. Did you join any clubs? What'd you guys do for? I mean, you're back in Tucson, so you're seeing old friends, I'm sure. And what was that like?
Well, it was nice. We still, uh, we didn't use the officers club that time, this time, like we did the first time. Mildred and George and some of our high school friends, now adults, invited us to join Desert Club, which we did. And it was a club that started right after World War II. A couple of the old-time kids that grew up in Tucson came back to Tucson, and we're married now. And in order to see each other more often, they decided to get together once a month. So that's how Desert Club started. And of course, by the time we came back to Tucson in '63, it had grown to be a large club. And it had also started including not so old timers, but it was founded on a bunch of old timers that wanted to get together. They met once a month. You paid a monthly dues, and you had a party once a month and got together. And a group of the club would be in charge of the party every month, and that was it.
Would it be usually at somebody's house or the restaurant?
No, we rent places. Mm-hmm. It got that big that they'd rent Tucson Country Club for the evening and have a spring dance, or they'd go out and rent a Tanqueray guest ranch place and have a barbecue. They'd have real big parties, real nice parties.
And who do you remember being members of the club? That
oh gee, a lot of old timers. The Blands, Joy Cloud and her husband, Ry Kortner, and a lot of Uncle George and Aunt Mildred's friends, their age, Billy Bell, just a whole bunch of them. The Gallagher girls. They would have an open bar, and then they'd have either a big swing band and we'd have a dance, or we'd just have a barbecue or whatever. They were different kind of parties. We went to the old Pueblo Club one night downtown, rented that. But we quit after a while. It was after the party at the old Pueblo Club that Dad and I sat in the car after we left after dinner. We didn't stay for anything after dinner. And Dad looked at me and I looked at him and I said, I didn't enjoy that. And so we just quit.
What about it didn't you enjoy?
Well, Dad and I didn't drink much. Maybe we'd have one drink at dinner and that would be it. They drank a lot. Not all of them. Aunt Mildred didn't drink at all. She never touched liquor. She was allergic to it. She would have died if she'd had some. But there was an awful lot of drinking going on. And we just weren't enjoying it. It wasn't worth, we were paying for other people to drink. And we didn't have that kind of money to spend, and we didn't like the idea.
Yeah, so it was an open bar.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so I can see what. Yeah, it wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth it.
Yeah, you could, the people you really liked, you could see whenever you wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And it just was. We just didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, okay. At what point did you get involved in Bible study?
Well, we got there in 1963. I joined Bible study the next year, I think it was. How that happened was I had gone to high school and college with Vonnie Ross. She was an old Tucsonan. In fact, her her grandfather had been Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court many years before. In fact, his desk is in a museum up in Tucson. But anyway, Vonnie and I were good friends. And she came by the house after we arrived and welcomed me to Tucson. How she knew where we lived, I don't know who told her. But anyway, she showed up at my front door. And I was so happy to see her, and we sat down. And it's interesting. Vonnie and I sat there in the family room. I'll never forget it. She said, as we chatted about what we were doing, and she said, you know, she said, if we give our children nothing more than Jesus, we've done the biggest thing we can do for them. And I looked at her, and I said, what did you say? She said, I repeated it, and I said, well, you're right, but then we got to talking about Bible in this Bible study. She said, I have started going to the most wonderful Bible study, and she just went on and on about it. And she said, I'd like to invite you to go next week. And I said, no, I thank you very much, Bonnie, but I just don't make plans to do things like that while the kids are still in school. I like to be home when they come home. And she said, oh, this is in the morning, and they have a wonderful children's program while we're in Bible study. And she said, you're home by 11:30 or 12. I said, oh, well, okay, I'll go with you next Thursday. She said, I'll pick you up. So she did, and that's how I started Bible study. After the first Thursday morning at Bible study, listening to Shirley Stevens give her lesson on that week's study, I was hooked. It was excellent. It was so interesting and just exactly what I wanted. So I started Bible study then.
And it never ended, really, as long as you and Dad were healthy.
Dad and I were leaders in the Bible study. We became leaders in the discussion groups. He in his men's group and I in the women's group for 15 years. And we learned so much and we grew so much as believers. And made such wonderful lifelong friends.
Now, you found a church.
We found a church immediately. We always found a church. It was Christ Church United Methodist at close, well, I don't know just what street it was on, but it wasn't too far away. Yeah, Reverend Colby, what a nice man he was. We became active in that.
And then what was Dad's routine like? Was it pretty much a normal routine, or
oh, yeah.
Was he working late, or?
No, it was the normal routine. That's when we got that little Isetta for Dad to drive to work. That was the cutest thing. People just laughed when they saw Dad and me in that.
So three-wheeled car.
Yeah, like a three-wheeled motorcycle.
Yeah, but
with a hood over it.
Body on it, yeah.
And then it opened from the front.
Right.
And it said on the side, "Blast! Beware the blast."
Beware of blast. Yeah. Now there's some days you got up very early, right? Though.
Oh yeah, Mike and George were on. They had double scheduled at Palo Verde. It was so crowded. They were on the 6 a.m. to 12 noon schedule because they were in activities at school. So I'd be up and the kids would have had breakfast and gone by 5:30, 5:45. And then Dad had to be in his office by 7. And I don't remember your schedule, probably 8.
So early mornings.
Early morning.
Yeah.
Mm.
But Dad sometimes had to get up very early.
Oh, when he became squadron commander of the missile site, he had to get up sometimes 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning and lead a convoy out to the missile site.
Taking the nuclear warhead.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because they wanted that done during the dark.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
He'd strap on his 45 and on his uniform, and out the door he'd go.
So Mike and George were going from 6 a.m. to noon, and they would come home, right? Do you remember their school activities?
Well, George was in the golf team. He was terribly disappointed not to make the basketball team, because he had played real good basketball in junior high. But this was a different venue. This was a much larger. Neither one of the boys made the basketball team. It hit George the hardest. Mike asked the coach if he could stay and be the one that took stats and sat on the bench for the team, and he did that until he graduated. George became very disillusioned, and he was on the golf team. He was on the debate team. Mike was in photography at the time. That was about it with him.
And both of them, when they started driving, both of them had cars.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, yeah. So they could go back and forth.
Right.
Yeah. Now, how often are you seeing Grandma and Grandpa?
Well, Grandma died the next year after we moved. We got there in the summer of '63, and Grandma had had the breast surgery in that fall, and then she died the next April. So Dad was left a widower right after we got back, and so we had him out for dinner real often and tried to help him.
Now I also remember Dad going down to help Uncle Herb quite often.
Yes, and but that was the first time that we lived here. Not so much the second time, because Mom was gone, and of course he didn't seek out help from Grandpa to fix him anything to eat. But Uncle Herb would come out and visit us. Occasionally he'd say, "When I'm ready to drive to Benson, I'll come see you." But Hank Lieber lived out in the 49ers, an old sports friend. And I think Frank played pro.
Yeah, Hank was a very, very well-known professional baseball
Well, he and Uncle Herb were like brothers. They were very close. So when he'd come out to see Hank, of course he'd drop by to see his nephew and wife.
Now, not long after we got there, President Kennedy was assassinated.
Yes, November
Right.
22nd, I think it was, in 62.
63.
63, excuse me. Dad had been told to fly the U.S. Air Force band up to Colorado Springs, Colorado. They were to play up there at the academy, and so he took off that day to fly them up, and I got a phone call that afternoon, or that noon maybe it was, from Dad, because he was supposed to go up, drop them off, and come right back. Got a call from Dad, and he said, "I won't be back tonight." He said, "The president has been assassinated." I was shocked. I didn't have the radio on or anything, so I didn't know. And he said, we've been, our flight back has been canceled. And he said, I'll probably be back tomorrow. So that's how I found out about President Kennedy.
Mm-hmm. What was your reaction when you heard?
Oh, I was stunned. I felt terrible. It's a terrible thing to have happen. And I was just dumbfounded. None of us expected it.
Do you recall crying?
Did I what?
Did you cry? Do you recall crying at all?
You know me with tragedy. I get paralyzed, and I just stood there by the counter, and just felt frozen. I don't remember crying. No.
Did you turn on the TV? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Because I remember I was at school, and we were going in after lunch or afternoon recess, I can't remember what, and there were teachers. The teachers were kind of clumped together, and some of them were crying.
Or.
And then the news filtered out,
Is that how you found out?
The president had been assassinated, yeah.
You were in junior high then?
No, I was in grade school.
No, you were in grade school.
4th grade.
Uh-huh. It's interesting. When President Roosevelt died, I was in a class at the university. I was a student there. And I remember Anna Mae Sharp coming in and saying, class is canceled. Our president has just died. And again, you just felt frozen.
And then in 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Who?
Martin Luther
Yeah.
King. There's something happened then too.
Oh yes, we were still living in Indian Ridge, of course. And we were living just a house off of the corner of Sabina Canyon Road. And the night of the day he was assassinated, apparently there had been a big meeting out in Sabina Canyon, at a home in Sabina Canyon, I don't know who they were, but there was a big meeting. And I have no idea whether they were black, white, yellow, green, yellow, red, or what. But one of the cars full of people who had been at the meeting came down Sabino Canyon, from Sabino Canyon, where the house was, and turned into Indian Ridge right at our corner. And I always left my light on, our lights on outside. We had a long walkway from the street, and there was an evergreen tree planted at the end and a lamp post. I had the light on, and I was sitting in the living room. Dad had gone to bed, but you boys were out.
I wasn't out.
You were out, but George and Mike were. And I was sitting in my nightgown on the sofa by the front window. And we had windows completely across the front of our living room and dining room. All of a sudden, something broke through the front window, just shattered the window and went clear across. We had a long living room, clear across the living room to the fireplace in the far wall. And I thought it was a gun. It sounded just like the shot of a gun. And I went like this on the side of the couch to get out, to try to get myself down on the couch. And Dad came rushing out from the bedroom. What's happened? I said, someone just threw something through the window. And we had a shotgun at the house. He got the shotgun and came into the living room just in case someone started to come in. And lo and behold, there was a great big rock, like a boulder, they had thrown across our yard through our window. And it seems that they drove up Indian Ruins Road, which was a windy road, up to Tanqueray. They had driven up there and did the same thing to 3 houses in the block on that area. 2 other houses that had the same thing happen. I guess it was out of rage and response to.
But how do you know it was?
We don't know. I don't know.
So you're just assuming it was people who were in that meeting. How did you
Oh,
hear about
I
that
don't know
meeting?
how I found that out, but that's how I found that out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how. I don't recall how,
Mm-hmm.
unless it was investigated afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
and they found that out. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting? I never thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a bad evening.
Yeah, well, I remember. I was there. I woke up too. So you, so then, how long before Dad retired?
He retired in May 31st of 65, 2 years.
Okay, so we were just there 2 years before he retired.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then what did he do?
Well, in his lifetime, he never retired from one job without having already signed for another. Excuse me, I got such allergies this morning. I can't even talk. He had already signed to go with Sears Roebuck and Company, and we had insurance with the John Hancock. Several policies with the John Hancock Insurance Company, and we had become friends with the head of the John Hancock office in Tucson. Really nice guy and his wife. Betty and, well, that's not important who they were, but he just really liked Dad a lot and thought Dad was so smart. And he said, I want you to come and work for John Hancock. And Dad said, I will never sell insurance, thank you. I'm not interested in it. I'm not a salesman. And he kept insisting. And finally, he came out one night without any invitation with the test that they always gave before they hired men for John Hancock. And he said, I brought this out, and he said, I'm not asking you to sign anything. I just want you to go in another room and take this test. You are natural. I want you to work for us, but just take the test.
He wasn't a guy named Larry Ryder, was he?
Yeah, Larry Ryder. How did you remember that?
I don't know.
How did you remember that?
No.
Larry and Betty Ryder. Bonnie. Larry and Bonnie Ryder. Bonnie took to me. She liked me a lot. But she was an atheist, an out-and-out atheist. She wanted nothing to do with what people thought was God. And I finally got her to go to Bible study with me. This is a little aside. So she finally agreed one Thursday. And she went with me, and when we came out and started home, she said, that was all very interesting, Avonelle. The Bible is just a bunch of myths. I cannot believe in it. And so she said it would be useless for me to go back. So she said, I enjoyed it and thank you very much. And that was the end of that.
Sounded like she was a religious atheist.
Yeah, a religious atheist.
So anyway, Dad's taking his test.
Dad's taking the test and passed it with flying colors. And Larry just shook his head and said, I don't know why you won't come and work for us. Well, Dad said, that's the way it is. And so he had already signed with Sears Roebuck. Again, you had to take a test to go work for them. And so that's who we ended up with, because he had heard good reports about Sears from two people, his own brother, who worked for Sears all through college, and Uncle Tom, and Wood, Aunt Mildred's brother, just loved Sears. He had worked for Sears. And they all praised the company and said it was such a good company to work for. So Dad signed up and worked for Sears for 15 years.
What did he start doing? What was his first job?
He was the service center manager. and that was managing the center that had were in charge of all the repairs and service calls, and the automotive section, and also the
Installation. He was the
installations.
he was the installation manager first.
Installation manager first. Yeah, that was first.
Yeah.
And then he was manager of the whole service center, which was over on 19th Street.
Right, because an installation manager, he was at the store.
Yeah, he was at the store.
He was installation manager. Right.
Yeah, and then they made him service center manager.
Right.
And he had about
the warehouse.
And warehouse,
Right.
where they stored all of their appliances and everything, and deliveries. Delivery, service, tires, service calls, everything. He was manager of that. He had about 125 people working for him. It was kind of like having a squadron.
Yeah. And he was, he was kind of the figurehead for all of them.
Oh yeah.
They brought their problems to him.
Right. Oh my gosh, yes. One Christmas morning, he gets a call from one of his service workers that worked for him, and they were having marital problems. So he said, "Can I please come out and talk to you?" Christmas morning. Oh yeah. They confided in him, and there were many times when he'd sit there behind the glass window of his office, and he'd be praying with one of them. He got called for it too.
He did.
Oh yeah, the manager. He said, "You will no longer have your Bible on your desk, and you will no longer pray with your people." So Dad would do it in his lunchroom.
And you were getting involved in the U of A, right? Started going to the U of A.
Very much so. We got involved with the alumni, people at the university, and they started I wish I didn't have these allergies. They started a VIP program, and it was a visitors program. And they had volunteer tour guides of the university, and they would give tours to anybody who wanted them of the university. But it was mainly geared toward families of young people, and they were thinking of sending their student to the university. And we had a group of us who gave campus tours, and we enjoyed that. Dad gave the bus tour. He and Frank Soltis, the son of the PR man when we were in college, and I had a couple of different partners that we went in pairs and gave tours. And that was fun because the campus had changed so much. We learned so much more about our campus. And then we decided after one of our high school reunions, wouldn't it be fun to invite a group of them to go on a tour of the university, some of the ones that went to U of A. So we got about a busload of our classmates from high school and gave them a tour. And they loved it. They just loved it.
Right. But then you started going to the football games, right?
Well, we had season tickets as soon as we arrived in Tucson. We got that, and had season tickets. We had season tickets before, when we lived here. Dad loved football. Mm-hmm.
I remember you were at some sort of event where he ran into the head of the ticket office.
Oh, that was
Chuck Magnus.
Chuck Magnus. That was at the opening of Saguaro High School. And we went to the parents' night to see the new high school before you started. And of course you were starting at the new high school as a freshman. And we were going down the steps or coming up one way or the other. We were each of us were going this opposite direction. And we passed Chuck Magnus on the way from the library downstairs up. I thought your library was downstairs.
Yeah, it was.
And of course, they knew each other. And so Chuck says, "Have you gotten your season tickets?" And of course, we had just arrived. And no, we hadn't, because you were going into high school. And Dad said, "No, but we want to." And he said, "Well, we've just opened the new park, the new stadium. I'll have 2 tickets ready for you on the 50-yard line." No, he didn't tell us it was a 50-yard line.
No, the story was that Dad said, "If you can get us tickets on the 50-yard line," thinking it wasn't going to be possible.
Absolutely,
So
that
was
was it.
Kind of a joke.
Yeah, it was a joke.
Get us tickets on the 50-yard line. Yeah, we'll buy season tickets.
Yeah, we'll buy them. He said, "I'll have them for you." And so Dad just laughed and said, "Yeah." And so he went down and picked up the tickets. And lo and behold, they're on the 50-yard line.
Yeah, 50-yard line went right between
It went
the
right
seats.
between the seats.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And Dad couldn't believe it. So, no, we didn't realize it went right through the seats until you boys went down to check it out.
Yeah.
You went down to check out where the seats were, and you all came home just, "Dad, your seats are right on the 50-yard line." That was it. He learned it from you boys. Yeah, that was funny. And we held those seats years until Dad started falling.
Yeah.
When we go down on the bus that we'd get on at the mall, and then so we didn't have to park the car anywhere. And Dad was so he was falling, and that was early, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Well, there were lots of steps, and it was complicated.
It was complicated. Lots of walking, and we'd go up the elevator, I remember, and then he'd have to come down some steps, and he fell twice, or down to his knees, not flat on his face, but down his knees. And finally, Dad said, "Can you get us seats? Can we trade our seats and get us down lower, where I don't have so many steps to go?" So we got seats down on the 30-yard line, just off of the aisle, instead of on the 50-yard line. And they were lousy seats because people were passing by us constantly. You couldn't see the game. So finally, Dad and I looked at each other and said, "It's time for us to turn this in." Number one, we were getting tired by the end of the third quarter, and we'd missed part of the fourth quarter being on the bus going home, and find out that we missed the best part of the game. So we said, "Let's just watch the whole game on TV." So we gave up our tickets.
And then Dad joined Rotary.
Oh yeah, they invited him to join Rotary as soon as we got back to Tucson. Johnny Haynes invited him to Rotary. The Old Timers Club, the Tucson Rotary Club, the one that Grandpa had belonged to, and the one that his big brother George belonged to, and all, and his friends. So Dad enjoyed Rotary.
And you kind of became disenchanted with your church, as I recall.
What?
You became kind of disenchanted with your church,
Well,
as I recall, and changed churches.
yes. I was working as a secretary of the keeping the books, membership books, so I was helping a lot in the office at the church, and Dad was one of the deacons or elders or something. He belonged to and helped. We were quite involved with our church, and then one day we decided to take to get an appointment with Reverend Colby. We wanted to talk to him. This was after we were in Bible study for a while and studying the Bible. And Dad said, "I think we need to talk to the Reverend Colby about the Methodist discipline. That was a big, thick book that told you everything that Methodists believed. And he said, I've read part of it, and I'm not sure I'm real happy. And then I was going to a ladies' Bible study that Reverend Colby was teaching at the church. And a couple of us who were going to Bible study fellowship were in the Bible study and in the church. And what was it we asked Reverend Colby? Did we really feel, as the Bible taught in Acts, did he really expect and feel that Jesus Christ was returning again as he ascended into heaven? Was he going to come back with his second coming? And he was the sweetest man, but he very sweetly smiled and said, well, you know, let me put it this way. I believe he is, but I don't know that it's important for everybody to believe it. And there were a couple of points where he was very wavery. In other words, oh, I know what the comment was that turned us off. He said, you know, there are 11 million people in the Methodist Church. And he said, we don't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
No.
Yeah.
And Dad said, I can't live with that. And keep coming. He said, you honey, again, he was this way. You can continue going if you feel that's what you need to do. But he said, I no longer want to come. He said, I want to find another church. So I said, no, I'm with you. I said, I feel the same way. And so we looked for another church, and it was not difficult for us to choose one to try. So Margie and Dawn had left their Lutheran church, Arvisons, and a number of my friends who had gone to Bible study fellowship were beginning to waver and find other churches. And this Evangelical Free Church of America sounded interesting. And that was the one that the Burroughs and the Arvisons and a number of them were attending. And so we visited them on Fifth Street, and immediately liked it. Walked in and we saw, what Dad liked was everybody had their Bible and had it open and were reading along with the pastor and studying the Bible. And he said, this is great. He said, the Methodist Church taught social gospel from the pulpit all the time, and nobody carried a Bible, and nobody even read it when they were in church. And he really liked it. And so we eventually changed our membership to that church.
Wasn't Dad also frustrated because this was during the Vietnam War, and there was a lot of anti-war.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Anti-war crusading from the pulpit.
Well,
and the whole National Council of Churches,
right.
Council of Churches stuff going on.
And they belonged to the National Council of Churches, which bothered us. And then they belonged to the student pastor down at First Methodist Church sent out flyers to all the university students regularly, and it was all negative and against going to war against Vietnam, and it was all against boys joining the draft. They should avoid it.
Very anti-military.
Very anti-military. And when Mike got a flyer in the mail from what was his name, Dr. something, when he got a flyer in there inviting him to a tea and rice party, and they were going to have a speaker to teach you how to avoid the draft, Dad said, that's it. And he said, I'm through. He said, I want no part of this. And so there were a number of reasons we left. Now I have to, in defense, the old Wesleyan Methodist people and church was not like that. It had grown that way, and as had so many mainline
Yeah.
Protestant churches.
Well, there were schisms in a lot of the old Protestant.
Well, they were fitting into the society rather than being biblical.
Now, at the Methodist church, were you involved musically?
No,
No, you just worked in the office.
I just worked in the office.
Okay. But then when you moved to the
Eat Free Church?
E-Free, did you get involved musically?
Later, after we moved up on the hill. Because the church bought land up on Swan and River and built a church there. Dottie Hendrickson was the organist, and she knew I played, and she asked me to play organ and piano duets with her for the offertory and for different in the preludes, and that was just loads of fun. I enjoyed that. And then I eventually became the pianist for the choir temporarily while Lane Justice took a 3-year directorship of the choir. So I had a wonderful time with my music up there. Yeah.
And of course, George and Mike have their own cars, but for a long time I wasn't driving because we moved when I was in 4th grade.
Yeah.
So it was going to be at least 6 years before I was driving. So
Right.
were you busy driving me back and forth places? Do you recall?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And then summers with the swimming pool, what was that like?
Until I'm trying to think when all you kids seem to just kind of leave swimming in the pool. You got other activities and we're out with other people. The pool wasn't used a lot after the first few years. Dad bought a big pool table and put it in the family room for you boys. I don't know whether you ever played it or not.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, of course. Well, that kind of sets the scene for Tucson. We'll continue in our next session, which will be part 15. So get some rest, and we'll talk later.
I have a funny story to tell you before it ends.
Perfect.
You asked about clubs.
Uh-huh.
Shortly after I started being a leader in BSF, 2 ladies came to me and invited me to a coffee, and it was a PEO, kind of a rush party coffee. So I went and enjoyed it, and shortly after, these 2 ladies came to me, and I got a formal invitation in the mail to join PEO. And that came first before the ladies. And so I wrote a regret back to them and told them that I was honored to be asked to join, but I would have to give my regrets. And that was that. And I get a visit from the 2 ladies, and I invited them in, and they sat and visited with me very nicely, and then they said, we are concerned that you sent regrets about joining our PEO. And I explained to them why. They want to know why. And I said, well, I'm very involved in Bible Study Fellowship as a leader, and it takes a lot of time, and I have 3 very active boys still in school, and I just feel I can't be a good member of anything else right now. But I thank you so much. Well, they looked at me, and you know what they said? Nobody ever refuses to join PEO. They were just aghast. And I said, well, I'm very sorry, but that's what I have to do.
But they had reached out to you in the first place.
What?
They had reached out to you
Yeah,
in the first place.
right. Mm-hmm.
Why had they reached out to you, do you know?
Well, a member of they had invited me to this coffee because I think a member of their PEO group was Maybelle Nicholson. And you recall my talking about Aunt Tot, who was a friend of my aunt and uncle's?
Mm-hmm.
Her husband had been a lawyer, and she was a widow. And she was a good friend of my aunt and uncle's when I was in college, high school to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew Aunt Tot.
Mm-hmm.
She had a little dog named Buttons.
Mm-hmm.
And her son was married to Maybelle Nicholson, who was a member of PEO.
Okay.
But I thought their response was hysterical.
Also, I remember there was an organization called Pueblo Juniors.
Oh, they were women's club. I was never interested in women's club.
Right, but they hosted the cotillion or something like that. Because I remember they reached out to me through you, I think.
Oh, really?
Asking if I were interested in taking.
Oh, are you talking about Junior Assembly?
Is that what that is?
A dance,
Yeah.
Oh, that was cute. I had accompanied some of the Junior Assembly.
What was Junior Assembly?
Junior Assembly was a rather la-di-da little activity on weekends that taught little children, junior high school kids, how to dance and how to have good manners, how to ask a girl to dance. You were very young. There was Junior Assembly, and then there was the Senior Assembly, I think. Well, I had accompanied a couple of the lessons. The Drachmans were involved with it. Who else? I can't think of who else. But anyway, you got a formal invitation in the mail to join Junior Assembly.
That was because you had been involved, probably.
I have no idea why, but you were asked. And I sat you down and I said, you've been invited to be a part of Junior Assembly. Well, what was that? What's that, Mom? And I said, well, it's on Saturday down at the Temple of Music and Art, and it's just a group of boys and girls they invite to come and learn how to dance and how to have nice manners when you start dating. And you said, are you kidding? And I said, no. I said, it's a nice organization if you want to be part of it. He said, when is it? He said, oh, that'd interfere with baseball. No thanks, Mom. I said, okay.
Okay, well that lays a nice foundation, as I said, for our return to Tucson. We'll talk about other things in our next session. But in the meantime, get some rest.
I will.
Love you.
Love you more.
No, you don't.